Oh, check that out, guys. Oh, that is sweet. Do you see that? Do you see that? That motor came out with this thing. That is sweet. I don't mind clipping these wires if I need to make that work. That, oh man, it doesn't get better than that. See, I don't have to disassemble any of this then. I don't have to disconnect from the shaft for that motor. What I decided to do was to desolder this motor and mark the wires. And I'll just simply number the terminals on the motor itself and make sure I don't wash them off when I clean the motor. So terminal 1 will be on this corner here. The noise you hear in the background is wifey vacuuming. We got so many cats around here right now with our 2 cats that we own, and my boy's cat, which we call the grand cat. That it's driving her a little bit batty. She's always wanting to vacuum and all that stuff. She runs a tight ship around here, and I just have to basically toe the line. So I got a brand new Weller soldering iron. I had a Weller to begin with. I had the WES51. I just bought the digital version of that. My wife needed a soldering iron for her jewelry work, so I gave her my WES51, and I went ahead and bought myself a WESD51, which is the digital version of that. The reason I wanted that is because it actually has a pretty accurate temperature control, the sensor being very close to the tip, so that it maintains temperature at the tip actually pretty well compared to some other brands. Our local electronic surplus store carries all the Weller soldering tips and all that, carries a lot of Weller parts, so that's actually going to work out really well for me. I've tinned it last night and I haven't soldered with it yet, so I'm tinning it now. Got it turned up a little bit high, so let's see if we can back it down just a bit. All I want to do is remove these wires. They're the 3 wires from the electric motor. So that shouldn't take a whole lot of heat. Wire number 1. Wire number 2. Ooh, I love the smell. These wires are like that. I mentioned it in my first video on this set. The wires that they use at this time have a very distinctive smell. It's one that I like a lot. And when you heat the wires, that smell gets stronger. Everything is determinated. So I've got this section off of here. We'll look at that in just a minute. So there's number 1. There's number 2. And there is number 3. Now what I want to do is get a picture of that in the video in case I accidentally wash these marks off. So looking at the motor from, make sure I'm in there okay, looking at the motor from the back side, number 1 is the second terminal from the right, number 2 is the next terminal to the left of that, and number 3 is this final terminal all the way to the left. So there is the motor arrangement. Pretty neat. I really like this coupler that's on here that connects one end of the shaft to the end that controls the dial. This reminds me so much of a steering coupler on a car. And it's a good idea. It's a great idea actually, because it eliminates the necessity to have perfect alignment for that long shaft from the back where the preset disc is up to the front, so you don't have excess wear. It's just one of those touches that I think Scott put in that other brands maybe didn't always focus on. Scott did a nice job. So I'm going to set this whole assembly aside for later cleaning, and I'm going to deal with the main chassis for right now. If you're really careful with all of your labeling, you do a lot of labeling, you have to do a lot less searching later. now let's see what we have here. I want to remove these guys, but here's the trouble with that. These things are all connected, so I'm not sure if it's wise. I'm not sure if it's wise to separate. Let me tip this so you can see it. It's still heavy. I'm not sure if I can actually disconnect or remove this, if it's wise to remove that or just leave this all assembled. I'm not sure yet. Since I don't know, I think I'll leave it be for the moment. I don't want to damage it, but I also don't want to I don't want to damage it taking it off, but I don't want to damage it, you know, leaving it on either. I like this wire dress. These wires are in good shape, so I'm going to leave them alone. And that's very visible when you look from the back side of the radio. So all I really want to do is clean these off without doing anything to them. I'll clean these off in here as well, but they're all nice and smooth, so I don't see any issues happening there. There's no clunkiness going on. So I'll clean all that out with contact cleaner, and I'll go into it with a blast of deoxit on everything and work it and get it all conditioned. And then I'll brush these wires off here and get those cleaned. But really, I'm more and more inclined to think if I handle this chassis carefully, that I can leave these the way they are and not mess with them. Because the more I fiddle with these wires, the more problems I'm going to cause here. And I don't want those problems. This is really nicely laid out, really nicely mounted, and it would be stupid of me to mess with that. So I think I've just made up my mind. I'm going to leave those alone. Here's the back. Here's that shaft that connects. This is the end that goes into that that coupler. I'm going to call it the steering coupler. And see that how that works. I also need to get this cover off and get a look at the tuning condenser down below. Really, there's not a lot to do up here. I think if I'm really smart, the less I do up here, the better. I'll clean it up and make it look good. But this is in pretty decent shape. You can see the chrome is in decent shape. I'll get that cleaned up with a vacuum. I'll do that off camera and get that looking good. And I don't see a lot of need to mess with it. I think this assembly here on the back will probably come off much the same as this front assembly did, which is what I'm going to try to do next. But I need to get this cover off first. So let's go ahead and do that. Well, look how rusty that side is compared to the other. I don't really want to paint that. I'm hoping that'll come off with the Simichrome. Okay, that's going to have to lift straight off, which means these tube shields and tubes are going to have to come off too. If you don't know about these spring-loaded, these are used a lot in battery radios, these spring-loaded tube shields. There's a coil spring in there. You can kind of see it, I hope. And what you do is a bayonet mount. You push it on and you turn it and it locks in position. It's like putting in a light bulb. And they're much more secure when they're sitting sideways like this. That's why you see them in portable radios a lot, because they stay in place. When you're removing a mini like this, a 9 or a 7-pin mini, don't just bend it back and forth. What you do is you just rock it a little bit in a circular motion like that, and eventually, and while gently pulling on it, but don't deflect it a lot. Don't deflect it a lot, just rock it a little bit as you're pulling out, and it'll work those tubes loose, and they'll come out nice and straight like that without being all bent up. I can't tell you how many of these tubes I've had to straighten the pins on because some ogre got in there and starts yanking on them and bends them all to hell. Now I have Marty the cat. Let me show you this, guys. Marty the cat's going to drive me nuts. Look at that. There you go. Yeah, see, this is what I mean. He's got to find the most difficult place in the world to reach him where he can lay down and take his nap. This is what it's like to have cats, guys. They about drive you crazy. And this guy here is no exception. See? He's got to play. He's got to mess. Marty, come on, buddy. Come on, Marty. All right, come on. No. Get down. Come on. Get down. I know. Life's hard. Okay, go lay somewhere now. Alright, now I gotta get set back up. I'm done with my little excursion with Marty. Okay, so there's two. There's one. If you don't know this about cats, you get to be around them long enough, you soon learn it. Cats are probably the most stubborn creatures in the world. And if they want something, doggone it, they're going to get it. See? If they want something, they're going to get it. And he wants something up on this bench. He doesn't know what yet. He just knows he wants something. He's got to have something. And he just can't let it go. And he's going to wear me out. I gotta close the door now. It's going to get all hot and stuffy in here. I got to close the door now because Marty has got to get involved in everything. Come on, buddy. Oh, I know. Come on, Marty. All right, buddy. Out you go. Out you go. There you go. Hate doing it, guys. I just set this little stereo up yesterday. I'll be doing a video on some of this. I'm going to have to restore every piece of equipment except for that CD recorder and that reel-to-reel. But I'm going to do it anyway because it'll be kind of fun to listen to. So that's going to be my stereo in this room. All right. Now, finally, now I've dispensed with the feline activities. Let's lift this see if that comes off. There we go. Look at that magic. Look at that, guys. It's pretty clean inside. And I think this will come off pretty well. This will look good when I'm done. No sweat. Alright, so you see that tuning condenser. I can't get away from using the word condenser. I've read too many old books about radios that's the word I use now. I don't call it capacitor. I don't think I've used the word capacitor much at all in the last few years. My engineering buddies would all frown, but so what? So, this is wow. Okay, so this looks like the tuning slugs for the FM are right here. Okay, you know the FMIF was in that other chassis, but the tuner is shielded by this box. And like so many radios of the time, the FM is done with these tuning slugs. And then here is the condenser gang for the broadcast and the shortwave. So pretty simple arrangement. I'm really not going to have to do much in there. Usually these capacitors and resistors are okay. It's a low current environment. It's a signal environment. So the resistors tend to drift more when they see a lot of high current or high voltage. I'm not sure I'm going to see that with these. There's some small capacitors I might have to change. There's some unusual ones that look like some of the things I see in German radios. But I really, really don't want to mess in the FM. FM is a funny thing. These early FMs, the less you do, the better off you are. And they usually, if you just take good care of them and maybe replace capacitors that you can get to, they usually don't need much when you're done. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of leave things as they are as much as I can on this. Really cool. I see some written like checks and things like that on here, some stamps. I really like seeing that stuff. It's like a little bit of history that they didn't expect for somebody to be looking at this, you know, some 70 years later. But sure enough, I am. Okay, so this housing here that holds all these preset sliders, I'm going to have to kind of figure out how to protect them. Again, this wiring's in good shape. I don't want to mess with it. The wire dress is the way it was supposed to be. It was the way it was built. The less that I mess with it, the less likely I am to upset the wire dress or to cause a crack in the insulation. And I can leave this wire alone. So the payoff is big. If I'm real careful, I don't have to rebuild things that might have to be rebuilt if I'm clumsy. There's already enough to do on this radio without adding to my work, is what I'm trying to say. So I don't really see any reason to even worry about. See, this is nice. This tuning condenser here is not mounted on on grommets that I can see. It's mounted directly with these little posts here through washers into the bottom. Now maybe there's a grommet on the bottom, but this feels pretty rigid, so that's a good thing. I think I'm not going to have to lift this off of here. That's one more good thing that's going to help me a lot. Right after I put the cover back on, I'm going to be putting tubes back on in it, so what the heck, I may as well go ahead and put the tubes in the bag with the hardware for the cover. Makes sense, right? The fewer bags I have, the less confusion there will be when I'm going to do things, and besides, I'm going to do things sort of in assemblies, and so each bag can kind of represent an assembly. I will clean with some Simichrome. I'll polish up these covers. They'll look nice, these tube shields. Okay, here is what the presets look like. So I am going to read the instructions on this radio to figure out how this works, but I suspect you turn that little screw and then you turn this to tune in the preset. These are like little friction wheels. This big thumb screw deal here has got like a friction wheel on the other side, and you turn it. And this is just what I'm seeing right now. I don't know that for sure. You turn it and you kind of tune in where you want it to be, and then you tighten it down. You lock it in position with this little small thumb screw right here. Cool. What I'll do is I'll move all of them to one side. I'll polish this all up on this side, and I'll move all of them to the other side, and I'll polish this side, and I won't have to pull any of these off. And the beautiful part about that is that I'm not messing with the wires. I'm not having to pull this off, and I can still make it nice. And with this receiver, and I think I mentioned that early in the video series, but if I didn't, with this receiver, my goal is going to be to remove as little as possible, because amplifiers are kind of brute force. You know, you can mess with an amplifier and you have to worry about hum and other noise. But with an amplifier, you can be a little bit less finicky about it. But when you get into a receiver, especially an FM receiver, and especially an old FM receiver from the late 40s, you really have to be picky about wire dress and about messing with things. You don't want to, there's a lot of adjustments on these that they kind of did away with or made a little more robust in the later FMs that you don't want to horse with. The cool thing about it is they work really damn well if you don't horse with them. So I'm going to try not to horse with them. So what I'm going to do on this guy is I'm going to remove this antenna setup here, straighten it up. I will clean this. This should be copper under here, judging from the green corrosion. I'll clean that up. I'll lacquer it, make it look real good. Mount it on here. I'll paint this little box here. This was at one time chrome plated, but it's not going to look good, so I'm going to have to paint that. While I've got this all apart, I'll clean up this tag. The tag is screwed on, so I'll pull it off, I'll clean it up, and I'll put a coat of lacquer over that. And then I'll work on the face of this thing. These here are in really pretty good shape. If I just clean them up with a little bit of wire brush or a little bit of steel wool, whatever, I'll make them look good. Okay, I'm going to remove this antenna now. Like I said, this is part of the FM. This didn't come on every 800B. In fact, I've seen other 800Bs without it. I believe it was an FM antenna package. It was for improved FM reception. I'm going to remove this whole assembly as one. And if you're looking at the box, let me put a little. If I'm looking at the box, see where it mounts here, back up against this plate. These two right here in the corner are the attachment points for that antenna. Now I'm not going to need to remove that because I'm going to remove this whole thing, I believe. So let's, yeah, it's just done with screws. I'm not sure how I'm going to detach. Oh, okay, that's done with a plug. So underneath here, down under here is a 2-conductor antenna plug. The 2 conductors look to be at the top 2 pins. It won't matter, it'll probably only go in one way. Okay. So there we go, that's the plug. So that antenna is unplugged now. Go ahead and remove it from the radio. Alright, there's that assembly. So imagine it's tunable. So I'm not sure if there's a tank circuit in there with some slugs or what that for this antenna. But you know, I'll find out, because if there are capacitors that need to be replaced, well, and then I'll go ahead and check it out. Let's set that aside. Even if you can't seal the bag, there is utility in putting things in bags. Stand a better chance of keeping it together if they're in a bag. We'll go ahead and remove that Scott label. It's probably the first time this has been off of here since 1946 or 47. And the 4 screws, which I will clean up, by the way, or replace. Okay, and put that with the antenna, since they'll be going together at the same time. Not much I can do to remove this big cable for now, and I may never remove it. I thought at first it was really stiff, but truth is it's just thick plastic. Really thick, because that doesn't crack at all when you bend it. So I should be able to clean this up, make this look really nice. So, cool. This receiver, unlike the amplifier, is turning out more and more to be a real pleasure. Getting lots of little pleasant surprises versus the kind of nasty surprises I got with the amp. Let's see just how it does. What do you think? Should we do that? I want to be careful not to take the paint off of these little rules that are on here. So first I want to let this sort of start to do its thing to the corrosion. But it never hurts to try the easiest, gentlest way first. This may not be as good as I thought back here. Just like the amp chassis, this part probably got most of the moisture from wherever it was sitting. Yeah, because there's no chrome under that. Boy, this is some real thin chrome. I really didn't want to paint this. That's deceptive. It looks like you're getting the chrome when you're really just getting the steel. Well, shoot. Yep, I'm going to have to paint this. Drag. That's a real drag. What I might do is take that all the way down to the metal like this. Because that chrome is really thin. It's like it's been sprayed on. It's too bad because that chrome is so darn pretty. But there's not much I can do about that. Okay, let me see here. Let me work at this for a while. That is a real drag. Well, I wound up working on this for a long time, and I didn't have to paint it. I did polish it, and it looks pretty good. It doesn't look perfect, but it looks better than it would look if I had to paint it. I wanted it to look as natural as possible. And this is at the back of the radio, but it's very visible because when you set up presets, this big square plate is staring you right in the face. I'm going to end the video here because I'll get long if I go into the rest of the work on this. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how this thing turned out. And I'm going to show you what I've done on the top of the chassis. I'm getting ready to get to work on the chassis electronics, and I'll be working on that this weekend. Again, it's Friday, January 20th, and I will be working on the chassis electronics by this evening. All right, guys, check me out in part 7. That's coming up soon. This is Michael from Salt Lake. That's all for now.